egg from its surroundings.
What do you mean separation?
Well, if we look at the lines underneath there, it's almost like it's resting on top of it. Sometimes, I'm not gonna say that this is the thought behind it, but sometimes if I choose in my mind to not look at an egg, it's almost like it's a spaceship that's on top or hovering, like a craft hovering on top of the ground, which I almost always find amusing.
That's the thing, isn't it? I guess sometimes I do. Sometimes I do point out that I wonder if you actually understand that we've been together for 15 years and that I feel that you don't know me. And then yet you come with certain dimensions where I have not intended necessarily to speak about, and then you just kind of hit the nail on the head because you are very right. What is happening here is that this is the shade. This is the shade of the egg. Then the question is, and also you can't see exactly behind me, but there are two tiny black snakes or two black things
I
that
was
put the perspective of how big this egg is actually supposed to be.
yeah, because I wasn't gonna mention those since they're not
Yeah,
in
they're
there.
not
But
in there.
yes, I could have elaborated a bit more with what I thought about
So generally, this egg is meant to be experienced as something quite large. So something quite large. And the way the egg is positioned, it is positioned slightly tilted towards up. So it's almost like this egg has started to hover and is going upwards. And then you have the law. You have the finger. Because can the egg slide through? Can it fly further?
It's a
Or
bit of a brutal interpretation, right there.
but that's what this piece is about for me at least.
Yes, I can see that.
So can this egg hover? Can it move? Um, can it move?
I have a good feeling that it can. It looks like it can.
It did. It definitely did. It didn't. So I think this is such an impactful piece for me. Exactly because as I was going through my own trauma, my own battle culminates in this piece. And it also being symbolically the last piece I made in oil. I'm being silent because it is quite emotional. Speaking about this because we have never done that. Do you have anything while I regain my consciousness and regain my thoughts? Do you want to continue? Do you have something more to say?
Well, I think I sort of laid out my thoughts surrounding this thing. I of course I could always speak about my personal apprehension of it, because I said to me it's a bit more of I understand the thematics of it, but it also has a bit of this absurdity to it, with what it is that is at play here, and I think a part of my brain is enjoying the dichotomy of those absurdities in this painting.
What type of absurdities?
Well, you have this quite big egg that is interacting, non-interacting with its surroundings, partially hovering, whilst you have this to me, the hand could also be like a symbolist of humanity, of a scientist, of something. It is that very almost childlike apprehension where you almost comes a bit dumbfounded, but you have seen this new thing and you're now just all like, oh, how does it react if I poke it? That
Yeah,
would be
it
intriguing.
definitely. There is a painting by Saint John Baptist where, uh, like they're inspecting the Jesus's wound. So you kind of where we mentioned that this dimension of the real, and that is exactly what it is, because the question of the law coming down from the heavens and the force that is being established but inherently not belonging to neither nor incites the question of free will.
It incites the question of free will. You have to say something more there, because I have a feeling you alluded to in the previous episode that you would be going into the free will conundrum. But
But it kind of really pertains to the sensitivity and the force exhibited on it, because the way how we speak about what is free will, what if you kind of think of what do you put in the concept of free will?
well, it's not that I'm trying to be difficult here, but my concept and how I have believed in free will has sort of gone a bit back and forth over the years. And I think I have been firmly in both camps at certain times. And now I have sort of swung back to. I'm not sure if I should give my conclusion away, but I have sort of swung a bit back to that it's not necessarily clear for neither nor.
Yeah, I think there is this. I actually, free will is a hyper interesting question, especially. I also think free will is very interesting in the context of societal apprehension. I would very much like. I would love for somebody to conduct an experiment where they go across social and cultural and economical backgrounds and ask the question of if whether free will exists, and then kind of see who answers what.
So you want a socio-economic study over free will and a poll. Actually, that shouldn't be very hard to create.
No,
but
it shouldn't
yes.
be, but it's quite interesting because
Maybe that can be your next piece. You can create a web page where
you know what I'll also tell, like after this I kind of stopped. I've put myself more towards painting because I really enjoy painting. I think that my mind has gone through so much information that people cannot in the process of self-healing, that I had to give my mind a rest from all of these gloriously big topics and just focus on something that relaxes me, which is pure painting. That doesn't mean the concepts dissolve. One can never dissolve a concept. If something has been painted or created, it always has its meaning and its concept. So it's not about that. But I had to put away all of these big narratives a bit aside. But I wanted to say...
It's very interesting what you're saying there, because that's perhaps what you're perceiving. But as we spoke about with your first series that we presented, it ended up being about something that perhaps wasn't your intention whilst doing it. So there's probably a lot of big questions wandering around in your work.
Yes, of course. But now I'm enjoying more how things are made than wired, and then why and what is made. And I think people underestimate of how something is. Well, they kind of don't. There is inherent slowness to art and artists that is inevitable and quite well placed as well. But let's go back to the piece. So to me, as I was kind of going through my life and wondering how have things happened and why did things happen, etc., you have this dimension of the law that has been imposed because whether I wanted it or not, Serbia is a highly patriarchal country, one way or another. So you have this dimension. However, within every hierarchy or every established law, there is always somebody who knows how to challenge that law in an interesting way. So there you have kind of the question of agency. So this whole dimension between this whole interaction between the earth, the hovering egg, the impact but not so, and then the hand from the above, is the question that also pertains to the free will, which again is contingent upon the force of agency. Because what is free will? For the way I look upon free will is one being at complete capacity to have autonomous decisions over one's body and its actions.
Is mind included in this?
Yes, mind is
Body
part
and
of the
mind?
body. Body is part of the mind. I'm not necessarily. I'm not a dualist at all.
All right.
I am. If you kind of call what you can call me is a multiplicity. I don't know. That's a bad word for it. Don't. Yeah, that's a bad word. But what is really interesting to me is this dimension where free will exists within its capacity, where if I say that I want to raise my hand, I'm going to raise my hand. I can raise my hand. I can, if I want to speak, I can speak. If I don't want to speak, I can speak. I don't have to speak. However, free will becomes a very bizarre thing as soon as one understands that one is not incomplete, does not have complete authority over one's actions. Simplest case, saying something embarrassing at the wrong time. We've all done it. That becomes interesting because saying something in the wrong time or being in a certain way in X, Y, and Z scenarios, for example, if one is nervous, like I come from places where I've observed a lot of people. Well, let's go like this. I've observed a lot of people that when they come to the dentist's office, they start joking, although they're inevitably nervous. So there you have one response where your body is inciting one saying they're experiencing one thing, but the way it's choosing to interpret that is in a different way. So you can say that that's free will, but it can also say that's a response, and that's in-learned response. If somebody is nervous at a party, it happens often that people talk too much. They become very talkative. Nothing wrong with that. Like, that's your MO if that's your MO, but are you conscious of if that is your MO and what does that MO mean? And if that MO is leading you towards where you want.
So what you're speaking of is if there is outer signals, or what you're speaking of is if there is an alignment between what your mind would have liked to have happened compared to all the drivers of what is happening.
Exactly, because free will is contingent upon the informational processing and understanding of meaning. So, and 37 trillion cells, people. They synchronize, parts of them synchronize into this focused unity that we call the self, but at the same time, they kind of, not everything does. You kind of have this effect of ghost in the machine, of echoes that exist of different narratives, different possibilities, different potentials, and how those are navigated kind of depends upon consciousness. So to discuss free will, you kind of have to discuss free will in the context of what? And free will, again, pertains to agency, and agency pertains to understanding of our own coordinates within this dimension of informational processing.
Is it a simplification to speak about the what? Because you could speak about absolute free will. Do you, by your inherent choice in every choice you do, actually have free will, or do you not? So you could refer it to what, but for instance, if you say that free will is that you have the will to do whatever you would like, and someone says they want to buy a cruise ship, well, if they don't have the financial means to acquire that cruise ship, you could always argue very superficially that they don't have free will. But that's obviously not what's being discussed. And when we sink it down to deeper levels, then I'm saying, do we really need the what? It is much more about, do you have this base agency over doing things? Like, is it my choice what I, for instance, what I choose to eat? Is that my choice, or have I just been programmed through society and inputs throughout, or subsystems within my own body that I'm not aware of voting, and I end up with something? And then the question is that something still my will, or isn't it? Is that
But I mean, free will is a very interesting topic for me, who has gone through this eating disorder, where I have countless of times observed myself doing something that I do not want to do to myself, and yet I couldn't stop, over and over again. And I'm not a feeble-minded person, and yet my program that has been embedded so deeply in me, because bodily dissonance is something that is, well, it doesn't exist solely in my family. It exists in I think we as females have a very there is a strong need to start addressing this in a good way, and not in a way you can do whatever you want, it's your body, because you can do whatever you want, but
that's just the that is the that is the equally extreme counterpart of the other viewpoint.
yes, exactly.
So it needs to meet somewhere in between.
Yes, people need to, there is this dimension of nuancing. So in the context of free will, I was like, yes, I can. Also in the context of free will, going back to the Snickle series, I painted something. I thought that I was exercising my free will and painting one thing, but then it turns out that was something completely different. So free will in this dimension is a very interesting concept to discuss.
It is a fairly evident concept in this, like that free will definitely is a part of this. Yeah, it's absolutely a question that is being discussed in this piece.
Do you understand why I was kind of started speaking that maybe this piece would be interesting as a circular one, but then I kind of also think it would be too obvious.
Well, both yes and no. Like, the circle would of course be a symbol in itself, but like
so is the rectangle.
Yeah, the rectangle is as well, and the symbol is already there almost, with the egg yolk already being a circle.
Did you see there's a smiley face in the egg? I like smiley face.
It is most certainly a very happy egg compared to.
Yeah, I mean, this egg is just wagging. It's just like, I'm going to Hoover. And yet you have this interaction where you kind of are wondering whether it's kind of interesting to kind of look at it. Like, is this hand going to push more towards the egg? Is it going to stop the egg from its further? Because there is inherent movement in this egg, whether it's hovering or it's kind of going upwards, or if it's moving across the surface. I'm not at that part. I'm not entirely sure, but there is this question for me where I kind of look at it and I'm thinking, like, does this finger stop the egg?
So there's something I always find interesting with this, and I might be off again, but we had the two snakes over there, which also could indicate movement. So it could indicate that the egg is sliding this direction. But that's actually not what I wanted to speak about. It's more about the hand again. To me, there is something. It's not. My references sound so off if I'm formulating this wrongly, but it's not the hand. It is something about the interaction between the hand and the egg that almost feels childlike to me. It is almost like the hand isn't fully aware of its impact and what it is doing. And I don't have a feeling that it is necessarily gonna continue on pushing. It is almost like a child discovering something that is new, that is like a discovery, and it is like doing that weird thing. It is interacting with it, but it's not like too hard interacting with it either. But to me, it feels like the hand will pull back. And I don't know why I have that. I have no idea why that sense is so strong with me.
But do you know what is interesting for me? Like, I enjoy that you're saying that, because that means that you're seeing a different set of references than I am, or different because I am Everettian, so that means that I have been very much convinced by um, what we call like a theoretical physicist. Is that's what a cosmologist and theoretical physicist
Yeah,
Sean Carroll.
it's just so funny that he gets like the he's like the unofficial leader of Everettians.
Yes.
But yes, go on. You're on Everettian.
Where all the worlds exist as projection of the wave function or the probability curve of its existence. So that means, and how every single stroke is made, since this piece represents all of my emotions and all of these dimensions that we're speaking about it now, that means that part of what you are experiencing in this egg has been imprinted strongly enough. It has been that particular dimension has been traced and retraced to a sufficient degree that your own apprehension apparatus allows for it to establish such possibility.
It's not just a possibility. I would go as far as saying I'm sure the hand is pulling back.
Because for me, the main interaction happens here, where I'm almost kind of like, if I look at this egg, it's really shiny. Like the sun, the light comes forward towards it, and then you have, it's almost like glass-like for me. So I'm almost wondering if the egg actually had this dent to begin with, and then the finger is coming down to figure out whether it's dent, and then they're gonna get stuck where the egg can't move and the finger can't pull because the egg is attempting to move.
This is panning out to be quite a complex story.
Of course, it's a complex story. Well, as complex as the human interpreting it.
Well,
no.
Yes, most certainly, but why not?
Why not? But that's the thing, isn't it? So that's why I'm telling you, you're very certain of that, and I kind of apprehend it in this way, and potentially that is what made me sad, because my journey towards here has not been an easy one. I have, for somebody who has her whole life just yearned to have an absolute freedom and know how to navigate absolute freedom. Don't misunderstand me. Like, I don't think freedom. I think freedom is non-existence if you don't know how to navigate it, because that means that one is again fallen prey to the inner clockworks of pre-established parameters. So going back to growing up, going back to agency systems that have been embedded early on. So I was somebody who is still not still. I've climbed my mountain. Who is at the place where this has not been like an utterly easy task, and especially within me in this dimension with oil. I thought that oil would set me free, and ended up trapping me kind of even more, because I don't deal. My body does not have the capacity to tackle the toxicity, and I know you as well are of such character that you could not go into my studio because you don't tolerate the smell. You kind of, even if it's odorless turpentine, you still sense it.
Well, yes, I'm almost annoyingly sensitive when it comes to solvents.
Well, solvents, perfumes, food smells, etc., etc., etc. So this was a very hard-earned knowledge that I've kind of acquired, and that battle for me has been absolutely excruciating. And I think it's like, when I was painting this, I was wondering, should I just give up everything? Like, is this painting telling me that I'm not moving anywhere, and that the law that has been established has already contained me within such parameters that will not be able to move? So you saying this dimension where that finger will pull, not only it also kind of really touches upon something fascinating, and it is that dimension where your own mindset and where your own circumstances that you have been brought upon under define what you see. It's like glass half full, glass half empty kind of scenario. Um, and that's really interesting to me.
I agree.
That's really, really interesting to me.
Yes, and it's once again all the underlying references, the apprehension, the perception, how my model is built upon what I am watching compared to yours. Like, I don't know if I have agency over that decision that I made there, but that is the decision that I've fallen upon, and it feels like my own.
But that's the thing. Like we earlier today, we also, I can't remember what we were discussing, but I also kind of we kind of touched upon the basis of the subsystems that are embedded within the human psyche of during the early developmental period. So let's say from one is born to age 11, 12. Because there's a lot of subsystems that define that we don't even know exist, but they define that define a lot of our decisions and a lot of patterns of behavior that we inevitably inherited through such means.
Yes, I would almost, to me, that fits better as I think of it as programming. I think subsystems is also fine. A subsystem is in many ways what is the result after the programming. But we were speaking about how actually through several occasions through the day, which is interesting. We were speaking about how incidents that happens during your forming years in your youth often ends up having a lot of a much more of a long-lasting impact on your personality, and often keeps on staying on board maybe long after you feel that perhaps you even are conscious of yourself. It's like an underlying thing that keeps on being there.
Yes, yes, and that's what this piece is about. Um, I had so much struggle with this piece. It was so interesting. Like I was painting that egg yolk over and over and over again, mister. And I was painting that sky over and over and over again because I like if this was done in airbrush, the smoothness would be quite beautiful. But I don't deal with acrylics. I think like the plastic dimension of acrylics gives me a very cold feel, and I think just with the increasingly digital dimension, this part where I translated onto something as tactile as velvet is has made such a gorgeous impact on me that especially like as a woman who's always whose art has been traditionally translated through means of weaving. So for me, like that dimension of translation is really important. One thing that went very smoothly was painting the hand. So I guess, but it was also
because you would have thought that would perhaps be the more challenging part of this. I don't have much experience painting skies or hands or eggs or anything of it, but the hand and the egg is what I would have thought were the challenges. So it's interesting that it's the egg yolk and the night sky.
Well, the egg white was also a challenge, just because I wanted to induce this like 3D effect, and I don't, because just how my eyes are, my depth field perception is not. Like it has taken me a very long time to understand how to paint in depth. So that has also taken its own thing. But I think it's very fascinating because exactly in the context of my upbringing, I've always kind of learned how to. The law's existence has always been quite apparent to me, and that's maybe why painting the hand was not problematic for me. So that law, there's a mention of something that is very heavily in inscribing its existence onto everything else living, has always been quite apparent to me. While this dimension of agency, of how to turn things around and how to hoover and how to let go and fly yourself, that part has been wailed to me for a very long time, like, before it culminated in what I'm doing now, which one thing at a time, I guess.
More of that in season 2, perhaps.
Potentially season 2. I'm not sure if we're going to do a season 2. Yes, let's see how things continue. Thank you very much again. Thank you for your energy and your attention. And thank you, Chris, for creating space in your very, very busy schedule for me to do this.
Pleasure.
And then we're going to say goodbye.
Thank you all. Goodbye.
Bye.